I invite you to turn with me if you like, or you can follow along on the screen. The text for this morning's message, Psalm 107. And it's a longer psalm, so we'll just read the first 9 verses and the last verse. But I think you'll get an idea of how it goes. Psalm 107, verses 1 through 9, and then verse 43. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. May they say so. Those he redeemed from the hand of the foe. Those he gathered from the lands, from the east, the west, the north, the south. Some wandered in desert wastelands, finding no way to a city where they could settle. They were hungry. They were thirsty. Their lives ebbed away. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for people. For he satisfies the thirsty and fills the hungry with good things. And now that last verse. Whoever is wise, let them heed these things and consider the great love of the Lord. This is God's word to us this morning. Thanks be to God. Psalm 107 starts with some really common words. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Now, for some of you who don't know this, I was baptized in this church. I was raised in this church. I was here until I was 23, which was some years ago. But I remember these litanies, right? And one of the ones that really was a little tough for me was this one where you'd say, the minister would say, give thanks to the Lord. And all the people would say, his love endures forever. But you'd do it like 10 times, right? His love endures forever. And even though you believed it was true, after a while it just started to sound like his love endures forever. It sounded a little pedantic, right? So this was one of the litanies that I regularly experienced as a child in this very space. And it's that kind of phrasing, give thanks to the Lord, yes we do. His love endures forever. Well, yes it does. That sometimes we get so used to hearing, we forget that it's true. It becomes a little too much like religious words, things you say in church, things that are here in the Bible. Well, his love endures forever. But every once in a while, when you come back to words like that you've said many times before, you are reminded of the reality of their meaning. Something poignant pops up in life and you say, oh yeah, I actually do believe that. It's not just words. It's not just my religious, churchy stuff. And so for this psalm, even though it contains these words, what it goes on to do, and since we didn't read the whole thing, I encourage you today, maybe over lunch, read the whole thing. It describes 4 different rescues, and they were real stories of real people who were giving thanks because they knew in their real lives God's love endured forever. For them, redemption was so utterly real and present that the words could not simply be words. Well, what is that moment like when the words that you've been saying so often become real again and become vibrant again? I don't know if any of you are much fans of Star Wars, but there was a moment in one of the newer ones, in The Force Awakens, this was probably 10 years ago. They brought back some of the old classic characters and so forth. And the new characters were set, and they're all set in a time when the original adventures of Star Wars have become legend. Oh yeah, something about Luke Skywalker, yeah, and they did all this crazy stuff, and there was a confrontation between good and evil, but it's faded into myth. And the new characters then come across one of the old characters, Han Solo. And they say, wait, Han Solo, that's your name? No. You couldn't be the Han Solo. I mean, we've heard about this guy. He's a legend. He's a myth. He doesn't really exist. He never did. And yet, there he stands before them. They're very confused. And Han Solo turns to them and says, the Force, the Jedi, the dark side, what's true? All of it. And the characters almost step back and wonder. And even greater confusion. Wait, what we just heard people say, it's true? All of it? And it's a moment for awe. So to get back to Psalm 107, give thanks to the Lord because He is good, His love endures forever. Remember that the stories you've heard, and some of the stories I'll share today, you see, they're true. And God's love is true. And everything you've heard, all of it, it's true. Don't forget wonder and awe at words that we say so often because it's rooted in reality and redemption is real. So a few points to that end. Redemption is everywhere. Redemption is real, and redemption is happening. First of all, redemption is everywhere. Everywhere. Psalm 107 is one of these Old Testament-y psalms set in a context where people believed that the gods were kind of localized. Like you had the god of the Sidonians, well, that god was over there. And the moon goddess, for the Babylonians, well, she was over there with the Babylonians. And so sometimes the Israelites would make this mistake of saying, well, our God is where our land is. We're here in the promised land, and this is where our God is, the Lord. Yep, He's the God of the promised land. Now wait just a minute. The psalm makes a point of saying, well, from the north, the south, and the east, and the west. God is working in all those far-flung places as well. God's work is everywhere. He's not just localized. Far be it from Him, the supreme being in the universe, to be localized. I don't think so. He works everywhere. And that's part of the reality of His redemption. He gathers His people from the lands. As it says in another psalm, there's nowhere you can go from God's Spirit. You can go to the depths. Oh, He's there. You could go to the heights. He's there. He's everywhere. And His reality and His redemption is everywhere. If I think about my last year in the mission field, I've seen that in a different way than I was used to. Because out there in the world, there's a very strong missionary community. As some of you who are part of this congregation know. And you start to meet people who are from all over the place. Like there's a woman that I work with who was raised as the daughter of an Argentine, but then her father was a diplomat for another South American country. She was then raised in Kyrgyzstan, so she speaks Russian and Spanish and English, and now she works and lives in the Dominican Republic. Wow, what a story. And there are so many other people at this school and around the community where we live. They have all kinds of crazy stories of where they've been and where they've served. And yet the Lord is bringing all of us together to try to witness about Jesus Christ to a student body that I would guess is approximately 3/4 not Christian. They don't come from Christian homes. And this is God's work. And He's gathered people from all over the place, the north, the south, the east, and the west, if you will, to do His work there. You see, God's redemption and His redemptive work is very real when He starts bringing people together from all over the place. And you as a congregation, you know this. You know this. Because in some ways you see yourselves as a sending congregation. There's lots of people you've blessed and called and sent. And there's people that you've received from all over the place. Don't forget those stories because they are true. All of them. And redemption is real. So perhaps you can say with me, everybody together, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Redemption is not only everywhere, it's definitely real. It's real. Well, we read this bit about wandering in the desert wastelands, not finding a city. There was hunger and thirst. For the Israelites, we know that in past generations, they actually experienced this. The desert wanderings, when they refused to enter the promised land, and God said, well, we're going to have to reboot this thing a little bit. We're going to take 40 years to do it, but we'll get there. And they wandered through the desert and the wilderness, and they had all kinds of episodes of hunger and thirst. And so what the Psalm says is very much a real part of their history. Some wandered. They meant, well, our ancestors wandered. They were the ones who had to learn something about God's love endures forever, and they did it in the desert. This is not just to paint a picture. It's not a metaphor. It actually happened. It's not just a story, not just a legend. If you've ever been out there to Israel or wandered the Judean wilderness, you know it's very rugged. Oases really are a relief. There's few roads out there, and you could wander for days without finding a track to get to anywhere. Well, no wonder these people, they couldn't find a city where they could settle. Well, there aren't cities. You might catch a Bedouin settlement passing through. That's about it. But when this psalm was written, too, probably comes after the exile, after the Israelites were cast out of their land by the Babylonians and the Assyrians before them, and they had to come back, and they had to come back through that same wilderness that their ancestors had. And they say, we don't know where we're going back to a land we haven't never even been. They'd spent so much time, 70 years in exile, and yet the Lord has now led us back here. You see, the psalm is very real. It's rooted in real experiences. It's not a metaphor, lived experience. And it was meant to be used when the Israelites would go up and at their religious festivals and say, you know what, remember when? Remember how it was. Remember what the Lord did for us. And they would tell the stories again. And they might even say to one another, you know, it's true. All of it. I've heard a lot of journeys over the past year. Stories of students that come from all over the place. They're at Santiago Christian School, which is the school where I work, toward the north coast of the island in the Dominican Republic. We have a lot of Dominican students. We have a fair number of South Korean students as well, because South Korea is a massive sender of missionaries. So we get missionary kids there. And we have a bunch of Americans. We have people from other places too. One student I had was born to Chinese parents, but was born in Guatemala and then moved to Dominican. And there was another young lady that I had a few extended conversations with. And she was coming from Cuba. Her father was a pastor. And after she got to know me a little bit, she said, you know, I really hate pastors. I said, oh, tell me more, right? Because I was a pastor before being a chaplain for 13 years. I thought, this ought to be interesting. There's a story here. There's a story. She said, well, my dad was called to the island, and these other pastors here on the island, they did him wrong. She was an extremely bitter young woman. And then she began to turn that bitterness toward God, who she felt had betrayed her. Her family, who had served and done churchy stuff and done ministry. She said, I want nothing to do with him. I don't think he even exists. And in fact, she said, I won't believe in God until my self-sufficiency isn't sufficient anymore. I said, oh, be careful what you wish for. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, Lord, if you ever want somebody to throw down the gauntlet, I tend to know what you do with that sort of thing. If somebody really challenges you, well, you go get them, God. You go get them. You do your thing, right? 2 weeks pass, and I talk to my student again, and, well, how's it going? She says, terrible. Oh, tell me more. And she details how alone she's felt, how lost she's felt. And when the right moment, I thought, came, I decided to raise that thing that she'd said just 2 weeks prior. I said, you did say 2 weeks ago that you wouldn't believe in God until you found out that self-sufficiency wasn't good enough. And she looked at me. Oh yeah, I did say that, didn't I? Well, now what? Now that you know it's not good enough, is that a reason to believe? Well, I wish I could tell you that she was now a fully fledged follower of Jesus, and I can't. But I know that she's at least questioning her own assumptions about God, or her rejection of God now. She is a young lady who's wandered, and I got to be there when God called her back. And that to me is a real story of redemption. And one I share with you to tell you again, redemption's real. It's real all over the place. It's not just stories. They're people. And you've got your own stories, whether your personal testimony or a testimony from your family. Don't forget to tell those stories, because it's there in our lived experience that we know that these words are true. Say them together again with me. Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His love endures forever. There's something else about redemption. Redemption is happening. It is happening. Now back to Psalm 107. Okay, so we've considered some of its history, that these were real stories, some hundreds, thousands of years old, some a little less old. And we read this section in verses 7 through 9. Okay, then the Lord leads them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Let them give thanks to the Lord. And somehow, as the Israelite people, then the Jews, were going up to celebrate the religious festivals, they'd say, well, the Lord led us once to a city like this. Now we're here again at Jerusalem to celebrate. The Lord has led us here, and it becomes very present to them. The stories of the past are similar to the stories of the present. And that gives them hope for the future. You see, redemption's not just something that happened in the Old Testament with the grand stories, the miracles, the amazing things. Well, there's more. And it comes down to partway, it shows up in the New Testament, actually, this psalm. When we get to Mark's gospel, Mark really likes to arrange his miracles in very specific kinds of order. And there's a section in Mark where there seem to be 4 miracles that get a little too close to the 4 redemptions in this psalm. Later on in the psalm, there's a business about people on the sea, and they're rescued from a storm. Well, you know the Jesus story about that, don't you? Well, he's sleeping in the boat, and the disciples wake up and he says, I got this. And Mark lays these redemptions out in order, these miracles of Jesus in order. And the one that corresponds to the first section is when he feeds the 5,000. That's the first one of the 4. And so for Mark, when he writes his gospel, it's like he's got Psalm 107 in mind, and he says, that wasn't just my ancestors. I saw it happen with my own eyes in my time, because Jesus walked among us, and his redemption was real here and now. Redemption for Mark was happening in real time. Now there's more now. Because suddenly Psalm 107 is messianic, yes. It tells us, give thanks to the Lord, for He is good, His love endures forever. And it's the Lord who is doing this. And so Mark is telling us, Jesus is Lord. I saw it with my own eyes. Jesus is identified with the help of this psalm as God Himself. And you might have heard that. You might have heard those religious words. Y'all probably believe it. But I tell you this morning, the Christ, the rescue from sin, God's love, they're true. All of it's true. We give thanks to the Lord. His love endures forever. Now, there's something else I want to say about that. Given everything that I've said, that God's love enduring forever means not just back then, not just New Testament times either, not just the now. It's steady. Now, by way of contrast, look at these fans on the walls here at Boston Square. These are old fans, y'all. These predate me by quite a long time. And I remember them because in these summer months, y'all are sitting there in the pews, right? And some of you know where you should be sitting to get the fans. Some of you are smiling because I know that you know, right? And there are certain places that stay vacant because you don't get any air, right? You know this because you've been in here a number of summers, right? And with these fans, they tend to move a little bit, right? Maybe they're steady right now, but a lot of times they would move, right? So you get a little breeze, and they would go away. Oh. And you watch the fan, and preacher be preaching, and you kind of let it drift because you're counting the seconds before the fan comes back. Yeah. I know how it is in the summer in this building. Oh, there's the air again. Okay, breathe. And you relax, and you have relief, and then it goes. By way of contrast, remember this morning that the steadfast love of the Lord that endures forever is not these fans. It is not something that comes and goes, that's there for a moment when you pray for something and God does something and then you wait till the next crisis. It's not something that just shows up in the grand stories that a preacher can tell or that the Bible can tell or that you can say are your testimony. God's steadfast love is something that is there constantly at every moment supporting you, being providential, walking with you through your daily life. His love endures forever is a statement for every day of every moment. It is there with you. It is real. It is everywhere. It is happening. It is true. All of it. All of it forever and always. And it's true forever and always until the day and beyond when He will lead us to a city. You see, the story continues. We're told that we will see a city come down and that we will be there and that God Himself will be our light. Verse 7, He led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Let them give thanks to the Lord for His unfailing love. We'll be there one day and we'll share the stories, and His love will never cease. It's a love for all times, forever and always. So listen, if you're wise, you'll heed these things. This week I want you to consider the great love of the Lord in your everyday. When you go home today, read the rest of that psalm. Read Psalm 107. And remember that each of those little redemptions it talks about is real. It's real people. And always let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Say it with me. Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His love endures forever. Amen. I invite you now to stand and sing Song of Response, Oh, give thanks to the Lord.